Henry Walton was a man who lived quietly but carried an extraordinary secret. At 78 years old, he had amassed a fortune that could rival the wealthiest elites, yet few would ever guess it. To most, Henry was just another modest elderly man, wearing his threadbare plaid shirts, plain slacks, and scuffed shoes that had seen better days. Appearances meant little to him. What truly mattered were actions, not material possessions. Little did Henry know that a simple conversation with Max about a boyhood dream of riding in a Lamborghini would set in motion a journey that would reveal the depth of his love and the lengths he would go to make that dream come true. Henry Walton adjusted his worn tweed jacket as he stepped out onto the porch of his modest suburban home. The morning sunlight spilled through the oak trees lining the street, casting dappled patterns on the pavement. A light breeze rustled the leaves, and Henry paused to take it all in. This quiet routine was one of his small joys, a daily ritual that reminded him life's beauty often lay in its simplicity. At 78, Henry carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had seen much but spoke little of it. His neighbors often greeted him with kind smiles, though most thought him unremarkable, just another widower who spent his days tending to his garden or reading well-worn books on his porch. What they didn't know, and what Henry had carefully kept hidden for decades, was the extraordinary fortune that lay tucked away in investments and accounts quietly growing since he had won the lottery long ago. Henry didn't see wealth as something to flaunt. To him, it was a tool, a safety net for times of true need. And as of yet, there hadn't been a need important enough to spend it on, until now. Henry's world revolved around his daughter, Evelyn, and her spirited 7-year-old son, Max. Evelyn had endured her share of struggles. A messy divorce left her juggling work and raising Max on her own. Henry tried to be her anchor, visiting often to help with dinner, lend a listening ear, or keep Max entertained while Evelyn handled her endless to-do list. That afternoon, Henry sat with Max on the floor of their small living room. The boy's thin frame seemed too fragile for the boundless energy that radiated from him as he spread his collection of toy cars across the carpet. Max's face lit up as he narrated an imaginary race, his hands darting between the cars with practiced precision. "And then the Lamborghini zooms past everyone," Max exclaimed, his hazel eyes wide with excitement. "It's the fastest car in the world, Grandpa. Nothing can catch it." Henry smiled, leaning forward to examine the tiny model Max held up. It was bright red, with sleek lines and shiny black wheels. "The Lamborghini, huh? That's your favorite?" Max nodded with fervor. "I've seen them in magazines. They're the coolest cars ever. Do you think I could see one someday, Grandpa? A real one?" Henry chuckled softly. "I think you'll do more than see one. With your love for cars, maybe you'll drive one someday." Max hesitated, his smile faltering just slightly. He looked down at the toy in his hands, turning it over slowly. "Mom says I need to get better first." Henry's heart tightened. He reached out and gently placed a hand on Max's shoulder. The boy's illness, a rare degenerative condition, had been a shadow over their lives for the past year. Max rarely let it dampen his spirit, but moments like this reminded Henry of the weight the young boy carried. "You're strong, Max," Henry said, his voice steady but warm. "And I'll tell you what, I'm going to make sure you get to ride in a Lamborghini. We'll make that dream of yours come true." Max's eyes lit up again, his grin spreading wide. "Really, Grandpa? You mean it?" "I mean it," Henry replied, his resolve hardening with each word. "A promise is a promise." Later that evening, as Henry walked back to his house, his thoughts were heavy with determination. For years he had lived frugally, hoarding his fortune like a secret. But Max's joy, his laughter, and the glimmer of hope in his eyes mattered more than any number on a bank statement. Henry sat at his small kitchen table, his mind racing with possibilities. He had no idea how to navigate the world of luxury cars, but he would figure it out. This wasn't just about fulfilling a boy's dream. It was about creating a memory, one that would shine brightly no matter what the future held. For the first time in decades, Henry felt the full weight of his hidden wealth. It wasn't just money. It was a chance to give Max a moment of pure happiness, a chance to feel free, even if just for a little while. With a deep breath, Henry reached for his phone and began searching for dealerships. A Lamborghini, he murmured to himself. For Max, anything. The sun was just beginning to rise when Henry Walton stepped out of his modest home, an air of determination surrounding him. He wore his best outfit, a neatly pressed shirt and slacks he saved for special occasions. Though they were well worn, they carried the dignity of a man who still valued appearances even if he didn't often indulge in them. Today, however, wasn't an ordinary day. Today, Henry was on a mission to fulfill his grandson Max's dream. His first stop was a nearby cafe for a quick cup of coffee. As he sat at the counter, sipping from the warm mug, he unfolded a newspaper he had marked the night before. Inside was an ad for an upscale luxury car dealership located on the other side of town. The name gleamed in bold letters, Summit Auto Gallery, where luxury comes to life. Henry traced the words with his finger, feeling a flutter of nervousness in his chest. This was a world far removed from his simple life, but he wasn't about to let that stop him. Arriving at the dealership, Henry's nerves were put to the test. The building was a gleaming masterpiece of glass and steel, its sharp lines and polished surfaces reflecting the morning sun. Dozens of luxury cars were displayed in the expansive showroom, each one an embodiment of wealth and extravagance. Henry took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was crisp and faintly perfumed, and the floor gleamed as if it had never been walked on. Sales staff in tailored suits moved with purpose, their smiles polished to perfection. For a moment, Henry felt out of place, his modest attire and weathered shoes starkly contrasting with the dealership's opulence. As he approached the row of Lamborghinis on display, a voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" The tone was sharp, and Henry turned to see a man in a tailored navy suit, his name tag reading Caleb, manager. "I'm here to inquire about purchasing a Lamborghini," Henry said, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. Caleb arched an eyebrow, his lips curling into a smirk. He looked Henry up and down, his gaze lingering on the man's scuffed shoes and outdated jacket. "A Lamborghini, you say?" Caleb's voice dripped with skepticism. "You're aware these cars cost upwards of $200,000, right?" Henry straightened his back. "I'm aware." Caleb chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, let me save you some time. These cars are for serious buyers. Maybe you'd like to check out our used inventory instead?" The humiliation stung like a slap, but Henry refused to let it show. He stood firm, his hands gripping the strap of his leather bag. "I'm not here to browse. I'm here to buy a Lamborghini for my grandson." Caleb's smirk deepened and his condescension grew more apparent. "Look, sir, I don't mean to be rude, but perhaps you'd be better off somewhere else. These cars aren't for everyone." Henry's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but before he could respond, a voice broke through the tension. "Excuse me, Caleb. I'll handle this." The new voice belonged to a young man in his late 20s with a kind face and an easy smile. His name tag read, Josh, sales consultant. He stepped between Henry and Caleb, his expression softening as he turned to the older man. "I'm sorry about that, sir. Please let me help you." Henry hesitated, glancing at Caleb, who looked irritated by the interruption. Josh, however, seemed genuinely sincere, his demeanor disarming. "You're here to buy a Lamborghini?" Josh asked, his tone warm and encouraging. "Yes," Henry said, his voice firmer now. "It's for my grandson. It's his dream to ride in one." Josh's smile widened. "Then let's make that happen. Follow me, sir." As Josh guided Henry through the showroom, he asked about Max, listening intently as Henry described his grandson's love for cars and his courageous battle with his illness. Josh's face grew serious as he absorbed the story, nodding thoughtfully. "You must love him a lot," Josh said. Henry's expression softened. "He's my world. I've lived simply my entire life, but for Max, I'd spend every penny if it meant giving him a moment of happiness." Josh stopped walking, placing a reassuring hand on Henry's shoulder. "Let me talk to my boss. Her name is Sophia, and I think she'll want to hear your story. She's not here right now, but I'll call her. Please, have a seat." Henry nodded, watching as Josh stepped away to make the call. For the first time since entering the dealership, Henry felt a flicker of hope. Someone was finally willing to listen. Someone who didn't see him as just an old man, but as a grandfather determined to fulfill his grandson's dream. Henry sat in the corner of the dealership showroom, his hands resting on his knees. The plush leather chair beneath him felt more like a throne than a seat, and the hum of activity around him, the low murmur of conversations, the occasional click of polished heels faded into the background. His thoughts drifted to Max's infectious grin, the one he wore every time he talked about Lamborghinis. That smile was his compass, guiding him through this unfamiliar terrain. "Mr. Walton?" Josh's voice gently pulled Henry from his reverie. The young salesman approached, his expression both serious and encouraging. "I just got off the phone with my boss, Sophia. She's on her way here now. I told her about you and Max. She wants to meet you." Henry nodded, a wave of relief washing over him. "Thank you, Josh. You didn't have to do all this." Josh smiled. "Of course I did. Max's story deserves to be heard." 15 minutes later, the sleek sound of heels clicking against the polished floor announced Sophia's arrival. She was in her early 40s, with a confident stride and an air of authority that commanded respect. Her tailored blazer and warm smile struck a balance between professionalism and approachability. As she entered the showroom, she immediately made her way toward Henry, her sharp eyes softening as she extended her hand. "Mr. Walton, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Sophia Reynolds, the owner of this dealership." Her voice was warm, her handshake firm. "The pleasure's mine," Henry replied, his tone polite but tinged with apprehension. "Thank you for taking the time to see me." Sophia gestured to a nearby seating area, and they sat down together with Josh standing nearby like a quiet pillar of support. "Josh told me a little about why you're here," Sophia began, her tone gentle. "But I'd like to hear it from you." Henry took a deep breath, steadying himself. Then he began to speak, recounting Max's love for Lamborghinis, the boy's encyclopedic knowledge of cars, and the spark in his eyes whenever he talked about the thrill of speed. His voice trembled as he shared Max's diagnosis and the difficult reality their family faced. "I've lived simply my whole life," Henry said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't need much, but Max, he deserves this. I just want to see him happy, even for a moment." Sophia listened intently, her brow furrowing with empathy as Henry's words sank in. She folded her hands in her lap and leaned slightly forward, her gaze unwavering. When Henry finished speaking, she sat back, taking a moment to process. "Mr. Walton," she began softly, "your story touches on something deeply important: love, family, and the lengths we'll go to for the people we care about. Max is lucky to have a grandfather like you." Henry lowered his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm the lucky one." Sophia smiled faintly, then turned her attention to Josh. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," she said before looking back at Henry. "Here's what we're going to do. I want to help make Max's dream a reality. We'll sell you the Lamborghini at a significantly reduced price, and we'll also ensure that it's fitted with any adjustments needed to make Max's ride as comfortable and safe as possible." Henry's eyes widened and he opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He felt a lump forming in his throat. I don't know what to say. "Thank you, Ms. Reynolds." Sophia reached out and placed a hand gently on his arm. "Call me Sophia, and you don't need to thank me. This is about Max. Let's focus on him." As their meeting continued, Josh explained the available Lamborghini models and their features. Henry listened attentively, though his mind remained fixed on the moment Max would see the car for the first time. He could already picture the boy's face lighting up with joy. Sophia made a few notes on her tablet, ensuring the process would move quickly. "Josh, let's prepare the paperwork and schedule the adjustments with the service team. I want this car ready for Mr. Walton as soon as possible." "Yes, ma'am," Josh replied, already reaching for his notebook. Sophia turned back to Henry. "Would you like to see the car we're proposing?" Henry nodded, his excitement beginning to overshadow his nerves. I'd like that very much. Josh led Henry to the far side of the showroom where a sleek candy apple red Lamborghini sat under pristine showroom lights. Its curves were elegant, yet powerful, the kind of design that demanded attention without apology. Henry's breath caught in his throat. Even to his untrained eye, it was a masterpiece. "This is the Lamborghini Huracan," Josh said, gesturing toward the car. "It's fast, but it's also smooth and easy to handle. Perfect for someone who wants to enjoy the experience without feeling overwhelmed." Henry stepped closer, his hand trembling slightly as he ran his fingers along the smooth surface of the hood. For a moment, he imagined Max sitting in the passenger seat, his laughter filling the air. "It's perfect," Henry said, his voice thick with emotion. "Max will love it." Josh and Sophia exchanged a glance, their smiles reflecting the shared understanding that this was more than just a car. It was a promise, a memory in the making. "Let's make it happen," Sophia said. As the gleaming Lamborghini Huracan shimmered under the dealership lights, Henry felt a surreal wave of hope, something he hadn't dared to hold onto so tightly in recent years. The kindness of Josh and the promise of Sophia's help made him feel, for the first time in a long while, that he wasn't alone in his quest to bring joy to Max. But as he stood admiring the car, lost in thought, Sophia's voice brought him back to reality. "Mr. Walton," Sophia said with a reassuring smile, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor as she approached. "It's truly an honor to help you and your grandson. Josh has told me so much about Max already." Henry turned, offering her a humble nod. "The honor is mine, Ms. Reynolds, and please call me Henry." "Henry it is," Sophia replied warmly. "Now let's talk about how we can make this dream a reality." Sophia led Henry back to the quiet corner of the dealership where they settled into plush chairs. A coffee tray arrived, courtesy of Josh, who continued to hover nearby, ready to assist. As Henry took a sip of the freshly brewed coffee, Sophia leaned forward, her hands clasped together, signaling her full attention. "I want to hear more about Max," Sophia said gently. "Josh has shared some of his story, but I'd love to know more about what makes him light up." Henry's face softened as he began to speak. "Max is, well, he's everything you'd want in a boy. Curious, kind, and full of dreams. Cars, especially Lamborghinis, are his greatest passion. He knows all the models by heart, even the ones I've never heard of." He chuckled lightly, then paused, his eyes glistening. "But it's not just the cars. To him, they're a symbol of freedom, of life speeding ahead when his body sometimes won't let him." Sophia's expression remained calm, but her lips pressed together as if to hold back emotion. "And that's why this ride is so important," she said softly. "You want him to feel that freedom, even if just for a moment." Henry nodded, his voice trembling. "Yes, it's the one thing he talks about the most. And I know. I know we may not have much time. I just want to see him smile." Sophia straightened up, her demeanor shifting from empathetic listener to decisive leader. "Henry," she began, her voice steady, "I don't just want to sell you a Lamborghini. I want to help you create an experience Max will never forget." Henry blinked, unsure of what she meant. "I've decided to sell you the car at a significantly reduced price," she continued. "And not just that. We'll customize it to ensure it's perfectly comfortable and safe for Max's ride. My team will handle everything." Henry's hand tightened around his coffee cup. He opened his mouth, but words failed him. The kindness and generosity of her offer left him momentarily overwhelmed. "Ms. Reynolds, I don't know what to say." Sophia smiled, her tone warm but firm. "Say you'll let us help. This isn't just business for me, Henry. It's about doing the right thing." Carefully, leaning forward. "I'll never forget this, Sophia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I promise I'll pay every cent for the car. I have the means, and I want to do this the right way." Sophia tilted her head, impressed by his humility. "Of course, Henry, we'll respect that, but please know this. We're in this together. It's not about money, it's about Max." Josh, who had been quietly standing nearby, chimed in with a grin. "Don't worry, Mr. Walton. We'll make sure everything's perfect." "Thank you," Henry replied, glancing at both of them. "Thank you for believing in Max, for giving him this moment." With the major decision settled, Sophia turned to Josh. "Let's get started right away. Coordinate with the service team to begin the customizations. I want this ready as soon as possible." "Yes, ma'am," Josh said, already jotting down notes. "We'll make it happen." Sophia stood, her presence commanding yet compassionate. "Henry, if it's all right with you, I'd like to personally oversee the modifications and arrangements. I want this to be as special as possible." Henry rose to his feet, his gratitude evident in his weathered face. "I'd be honored. Max, he's going to be over the moon." Sophia smiled. "That's the goal. Now, let's make it happen." As Henry left the dealership that day, his heart felt lighter, buoyed by the kindness of strangers who had become allies. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to imagine Max's laughter as the boy sat in the passenger seat of the Lamborghini, his dream finally within reach. The next few days passed in a flurry of activity at the dealership. Josh and Sophia were hard at work coordinating the modifications for the Lamborghini that would soon be a dream come true for Max. Henry, filled with both nervous anticipation and gratitude, kept in close contact, ensuring every detail was perfect. But not everyone shared their enthusiasm. From the moment Henry walked into the dealership, Caleb, the manager, had viewed him with disdain. And now, seeing the attention Henry was receiving and the focus on fulfilling his grandson's wish, Caleb's resentment festered. During a staff meeting, Caleb's simmering frustrations came to a boil. "We're spending way too much time and resources on this," he said, his tone sharp. "It's a business, not a charity." Sophia, calm but firm, responded, "This isn't about charity, Caleb. It's about doing something meaningful. This dealership stands for more than just selling cars. It stands for making dreams come true." But Caleb wasn't satisfied. Later that day, as Josh was working with the team on final adjustments to the Lamborghini, Caleb cornered him in the break room. "You're really buying into this, aren't you?" Caleb sneered. "The old man waltzes in here looking like he's from another century, and now we're bending over backward for him." Josh's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "It's not just about him, Caleb. It's about Max. If you took 2 minutes to listen to their story, you might understand." Caleb rolled his eyes. "Spare me the sob story. I'll believe it when I see it." The situation came to a head later that afternoon. Henry had come to check on the progress of the Lamborghini, greeted warmly by Josh and Sophia. He was admiring the car when Caleb stormed into the showroom, his voice loud enough to draw everyone's attention. "I can't believe this," Caleb shouted, pointing at Henry. "We're catering to someone who doesn't even look like he can afford a used sedan, let alone a Lamborghini. This is ridiculous." The showroom fell silent. Customers, staff, and even Henry froze, the tension thick in the air. Henry's face paled, and his hands trembled slightly as he stepped back from the car. Sophia, who had been discussing final touches with Josh, turned sharply at Caleb's words. Her eyes, usually kind, now burned with controlled fury. "Caleb," Sophia began, her voice icy but measured. "A word. Now." Caleb hesitated but followed her into her office, the glass walls offering a clear view to the staff and customers still gathered in stunned silence. Sophia wasted no time. "Your behavior is unacceptable. You've embarrassed this dealership, disrespected a customer, and undermined the values we stand for." Caleb crossed his arms defensively. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. He doesn't belong here." Sophia's voice rose, her authority unmistakable. "What doesn't belong here is your attitude. This dealership thrives because we treat every customer with respect, regardless of how they look or where they come from. If you can't uphold those standards, you have no place on this team." Caleb's arrogance faltered, replaced by a flicker of fear. "You're firing me?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Yes," Sophia said without hesitation. "Effective immediately." As Caleb packed his belongings under the watchful eyes of security, Henry approached Sophia hesitantly. "Ms. Reynolds, may I have a word?" Sophia turned, her expression softening when she saw Henry. Of course, Henry. I hope Caleb's behavior didn't upset you too much. Henry sighed, his voice gentle. It was upsetting, but I believe everyone deserves a second chance. Sophia raised an eyebrow. You want me to reconsider letting him go? Henry nodded. I've made my share of mistakes in life. If someone hadn't given me another chance, I wouldn't be where I am today. Caleb needs to learn, yes, but maybe this is the lesson that could help him change. Sophia was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing Henry's words. Finally, she nodded. All right, Henry. If Caleb comes back willing to learn and improve, I'll give him one more chance. But only if he shows he's truly changed. Henry smiled, relief washing over his face. Thank you. I believe he can. With Caleb gone for the time being, the dealership's atmosphere shifted. Josh and Sophia threw themselves into the final stages of preparing the Lamborghini for Max. The car was fitted with special safety features and adjusted for comfort, ensuring Max could enjoy his ride without any difficulties. As Henry left the dealership that evening, he turned back to see Josh and Sophia waving him off. For the first time since Max shared his dream, Henry felt like everything was falling into place. The joy he envisioned for his grandson was closer than ever. But as he walked home, a thought lingered in his mind. Had he been right to ask for Caleb's second chance? Only time would tell. The day Max had been waiting for finally arrived. For weeks, Henry, Sophia, and Josh had worked tirelessly to ensure everything was perfect. The Lamborghini, a gleaming work of art, now stood in Henry's driveway. It sparkled under the morning sun, its vibrant orange paint catching every ray of light. Henry, dressed in his Sunday best, paced nervously around the car. He had barely slept the night before, thinking about the joy this day would bring Max. Every detail of the plan had been carefully considered, and now the moment was finally here. Evelyn's car pulled into the driveway, and Henry immediately rushed to greet his daughter and grandson. Evelyn stepped out first, her face a mixture of curiosity and concern. Max, bundled in a blanket despite the warm weather, sat quietly in the back seat. His eyes lit up when he saw his grandfather approach. "Grandpa!" Max's voice, though weak, carried excitement. "What's the big surprise? Mom said you've been planning something." Henry knelt beside Max's door, taking his grandson's small hand in his. "I've got something very special for you, Max. Something I think you're going to love." Max's eyes darted around. "What is it, Grandpa?" Henry gestured dramatically toward the Lamborghini parked a few feet away. "It's this. It's all for you." For a moment, Max was silent, his mouth slightly open in disbelief. Then, like a dam breaking, his face erupted into a wide smile. "A Lamborghini? For real?" he asked, his voice trembling with excitement. Henry laughed, tears forming in his eyes. "For real, champ. Today's your day. How about a ride?" With Evelyn's help, Henry gently lifted Max from the car and placed him in a wheelchair. Josh and Sophia arrived shortly after, carrying a special seat designed for Max's comfort. Josh crouched next to Max and gave him a high five. "You ready for the coolest ride of your life, buddy?" Max nodded eagerly. "I've been dreaming about this my whole life." Sophia joined the group, carrying a small bundle. "Before you take off, Max, we have something for you," she said, handing him a miniature Lamborghini toy that matched the full-size car. "Now you can always remember your special day." Max held the toy close to his chest, his smile unwavering. "Thank you. This is the best day ever." Henry, his hand steady despite his excitement, helped Max into the passenger seat. Josh ensured Max was secure, adjusting the safety harness while explaining each step in a calm, reassuring tone. When Henry settled into the driver's seat, he glanced at Max and saw pure joy radiating from his grandson's face. "You ready, champ?" he asked. Max grinned. "Let's go, Grandpa." Henry turned the key and the Lamborghini's engine roared to life. The deep, powerful sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood, drawing curious neighbors to their windows. Max giggled, the sound filling the car with light-hearted energy. Slowly, Henry pulled out of the driveway, the car gliding onto the suburban streets. With every turn, Max's eyes widened. "It's so fast, Grandpa. It feels like I'm flying." Henry chuckled, his own heart soaring. "That's what Lamborghinis are for, my boy. Speed, adventure, and freedom." They drove through the streets, the world outside a blur of color and motion. Max's laughter filled the car as they took gentle turns and accelerated briefly on open stretches. The wind tousled his hair, and for the first time in months, his face was free of worry or pain. When they returned to the driveway, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, clapping and cheering for Max. Henry stepped out first, walking around to help Max out of the car. Max looked up at him, his eyes shining with happiness. "Thank you, Grandpa. This was the best day ever." Henry knelt and pulled Max into a gentle hug. "You're worth every moment, Max. I'd do anything to see you this happy." As Henry helped Max back into his wheelchair, Evelyn approached with tears streaming down her face. "Dad," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "you've given him something no one else could. I'll never forget this." Henry placed a comforting hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We did this together, Evelyn. This moment is for Max, and for all of us." Josh and Sophia stood to the side, watching the heartfelt scene unfold. "We made a difference today," Josh said softly. "That's what this dealership should always stand for." Sophia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's more than selling cars. It's about creating moments like this. We've got to remember that, always." The small crowd began to disperse, but the energy of the day lingered. Max's smile and laughter had touched everyone present, reminding them of the simple but profound joy that comes from fulfilling a dream. The weeks following Max's unforgettable ride in the Lamborghini were bittersweet. The memory of his laughter and joy lingered in Henry's heart, a precious keepsake amid the reality of Max's worsening condition. Despite his declining health, Max's spirit remained resilient and the family clung to the happiness Henry had given them. But one morning Henry received the news he had been dreading. Max had passed away peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his mother and the love of his family. The loss struck Henry deeply, yet even in his grief he found solace in knowing he had fulfilled his grandson's greatest wish. Word of Max's ride spread far and wide. Neighbors shared the story, local news stations picked it up, and soon, the tale of Henry's unwavering love and Sophia's generosity became a symbol of hope and kindness. Letters poured in from strangers who had been inspired by Henry's selflessness and Max's courageous spirit. Sophia, deeply moved by the impact the story had on her dealership and the community, felt compelled to honor Max's memory. She called Henry to share her idea. "Mr. Walton," Sophia began, her voice gentle, "I want to rename the dealership in Max's honor. It's not just about the cars, it's about what they represent. Max's dream reminds us all of the power of love and kindness." Henry was silent for a moment, overcome by the proposal. "I think Max would have loved that," he finally replied. "Thank you, Sophia. This means so much to our family." The dealership underwent a transformation. Vibrant murals featuring children's dreams and cars adorned the walls. The new name, Max's Dream Dealership, was unveiled in bold, elegant letters. Beneath it, the tagline read, "Where dreams come true." Sophia and Josh organized a grand reopening event, inviting the community to celebrate. At the center of the festivities was a plaque dedicated to Max, bearing his image and a quote, "Dreams are what make life worth living." Meanwhile, Caleb, the disgraced manager, had taken Henry's words about second chances to heart. After his dismissal, he began volunteering at a local community center, working with underprivileged youth. His encounters with children who dreamed of brighter futures softened his once cynical outlook. One day, Caleb visited Henry at home. "Mr. Walton," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "I owe you an apology. You believed in me even when I didn't deserve it. I'm trying to be better now. Thank you for giving me that chance." Henry smiled warmly, clasping Caleb's hand. "We all stumble, Caleb. What matters is how we get back up. I'm proud of the steps you're taking." Eventually, Sophia invited Caleb back to the dealership. not as a manager but as a mentor for new employees. Caleb embraced the role, using his past mistakes as lessons to guide others. On the first anniversary of Max's ride, Sophia, Henry, and the entire Walton family hosted a memorial event at the dealership. Hundreds of people attended, sharing stories of how Max's legacy had inspired them. Henry gave a heartfelt speech. "Max taught us that even the simplest dreams can have the greatest impact. This place isn't just a dealership. It's a reminder that every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change a life." Sophia and Josh announced a new initiative, the Max's Dream Fund, providing rides in luxury cars for children facing critical illnesses. The initiative ensured that Max's story would continue to bring smiles to countless faces. As the event wound down, Henry stood outside the dealership, gazing at the glowing sign that bore his grandson's name. The laughter of children and the hum of conversations surrounded him, filling the evening air with warmth. Evelyn approached, wrapping an arm around her father. "Max would be so proud of you, Dad," she said softly. "You gave him a gift that went beyond the Lamborghini. You showed him how much he was loved." Henry nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "Max gave me a gift, too. He reminded me what truly matters in life: love, compassion, and the joy of making someone else's dream come true." From that day forward, Max's dream dealership became more than just a place to buy luxury cars. It became a beacon of hope and generosity. Families from across the country visited not only to shop but to share their dreams and be part of a story that celebrated the beauty of human connection. Henry, now a symbol of love and humility, found peace in the knowledge that his grandson's legacy was alive and thriving. And every time he saw a child's face light up in wonder, he knew that Max's dream was still taking flight. Henry's story reminds us all that true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the joy we bring to others. By embracing love and compassion, we can create ripples of kindness that touch countless lives. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales.